Hey there, and welcome to this episode of the Onco PT podcast. I'm Elise, your host, and I'm so glad you're back here for another episode. And in this one, y'all, we're going to get real because I have some life advice that someone else told me. This is not me, that I came up with this amazing wisdom and I'm passing it on to you. This was something that someone else told me that literally changed my practice for the better. And it continues to, I think, shape how I practice as a physical therapist. And now that I'm a business owner, how I'm working with this. But I don't think enough physical therapists are actually utilizing this approach in their own practice. And it's going to save you a ton of time and a ton of stress and frustration, and maybe even save your career from so much of the chronic, pervasive burnout we unfortunately see in healthcare, particularly physical therapy. One of the most challenging aspects of clinical practice is trying to balance it all. And again, this is not just patient care. We know that healthcare on the surface level is you work with a patient or you work with your patients and you help them get better, right? We went into PT school because that's what we like to do. But you and I know that healthcare and physical therapy for the physical therapist is so much more than just the patient care, right? So from providing best practice care to your patients, to getting all of your notes done in a timely fashion, balancing your ever expanding email inbox. I don't know if anybody is currently stressed out about their email box like I am, and all the other things that come up throughout the week of you just doing your job as a physical therapist. It's not easy to keep up with it all. But as the overachiever that you are, you're probably trying to get it all done, as part of being a team player. Maybe that's just me. I bet there's one other person out here who's listening now who's like, oh yeah, I resonate here. But I wanted so badly when I first started as a physical therapist to be viewed as someone who is dependable, who gets the job done, who goes above and beyond to care for their patients. And I did all of those things, but then I did more because in my twisted, warped concept of, quote, being a team player, which I thought was a really good thing. I have different views on it now. But when I first started, I wanted to be a, quote, team player. And so my schedule was full from when I started in the morning to when I finished in the evening, full of patients all day long. I was fitting in documentation whenever I could squeeze it in. Mainly, if I would try to do like during patient visits or like after patient visits between, transition from one to the other. But mainly I was documenting like during my lunch break, or I was staying after my last patient to try and finish my documentation as much as I could. I was always on email because I was afraid that I was going to get an email that was urgent, that would change my life or change my patient's life or change how I needed to practice with my patient, which no, but I digress. And then also saying yes to extra projects along the way. Again, because I thought that doing all of these things would demonstrate my value as a physical therapist. And I do think there was a component of me that also thought if I can provide the best quality care for my patients and I can get all these things done and I can show the value that I'm providing to my organization, that will also translate to better pay. Because I'm going to be honest with you, y'all. When I first started working as a physical therapist, my pay was trash. As in it was like around $31. It was not good. And this was at a large institution that absolutely had the capability to pay me better for my skills and my services, and they did. But that's a whole other episode. If you want more on that, I would really encourage you to check out that interview I did with Tori a few episodes back. I'll link to it in the show notes, of course. And so I'm doing all these things, as I think a lot of you probably are, because you think that this is the best way to be the best physical therapist possible. And it wasn't until I heard this game-changing advice from a podcast that I was listening to that I finally started prioritizing what really mattered in the big scheme of things. And I quit working all hours of the day and night and stressing about work that I knew was coming up the next day, especially like, man, I had the Sunday scaries for real. When you're having your weekend and then you finish up with your day and you're about to go to bed on Sunday night and you're like, oh my God, it's about to be Monday. I don't have those anymore. And I really think it stemmed from this advice that I heard and how I've been able to, and I'm still working on it, right? I don't have it perfectly figured out, but how I'm able to implement this advice into my own life now. Are you ready for it? Quit folding your underwear. When I tell you that the first time I heard this advice, I was aghast. It's the truth, y'all. I mean that with every fiber of my being. I was so viscerally offended by this podcast host that they would suggest that I no longer fold my underwear. I was like, what do you mean? What am I supposed to do with my underwear? Like, now let me back up. This podcast and this podcast host were all focused on business owners. And as an emerging business owner with the OncoPT, I wanted to make sure that I did things right. And so I was really trying to work on and learn how could I best run my business. And what I wasn't prepared for is how much that invaded sounds negative, how much it translated over into my clinical practice, like as I was working my corporate job, and how it benefited me and ultimately my patients. So this podcast host, we're taking people through how do you best focus on different tasks throughout the day of working in your business, and then also tasks that you do at home that are taking up not just the time factor, but also the emotional energy and maybe causing stress and frustration that are then leaking into or, coming over into your business life. And one of the biggest things that she suggested for these business owners is you need to stop doing these tasks that you don't enjoy and that are not moving the needle forward in your business, or in this case, in your practice, that you could spend doing other things. And it's not that, laundry is beneath you. It's that you genuinely do not have to do things a certain way because that's how you've always done them. And that's just because that's what we all tend to do, right? And so, like I said, the first time I heard this advice, I was like, oh my God, what? Mouth open, eyes wide open, aghast. But I think once that initial shock wore off, the more I started really thinking about this concept of stop folding your underwear, it made sense. And so now I'm gonna peel back the curtain a little bit, y'all. I'm gonna let you know, when I do laundry now, I fold the rest of my clothes, right? Like, I'm still pairing socks, I'm still hanging up shirts, etc. But I now have a little organizer in my drawer in my dresser where the underwear are still washed and dried, like I hope that you're doing for yours also. But again, nobody's seen those. They don't need to know if they're like slightly wrinkly or whatever. And so they go into designated slots in this organizer and they're not folded. And when I tell you the amount of time that has freed up for me in just not having to do that one thing, like I still have to do all the other laundry, like I still have to put away all the other laundry, but I don't have to fold the underwear. It was a game changer. And I'm not saying that my whole life changed when I stopped folding underwear, but I think it made me realize a little bit more about how much time am I spending doing things that are really not that important, that are not really making that much of a difference, either in my business or in my patient care, and are only taking me more time that I could be doing other things or not doing anything at all. That's another thing we don't think about, is we don't have to fill every waking moment of our time with doing something. Sometimes it's really good to just not do anything. Maybe you're laying on the couch and you're taking a nap with your dog. Maybe you're doing a puzzle. Maybe you're reading. Maybe you're meditating. Maybe you're getting a little more time to exercise, again, because you don't have to fold your laundry anymore. Or whatever that is, right? It's so interesting when you start with, again, something as silly and simple as quit folding your underwear, and how that can translate to other aspects of our lives as physical therapists. I had a really interesting conversation a few months back with a really dear friend of mine who's also a physical therapist. And she made the comment that, for so long after we graduated, because we went to school together and we graduated together, I've been practicing for so long, and it's been such a journey to finally get to where I'm enjoying the patient care that I'm doing, and I'm making good money, and I feel like I'm making a difference in my community, and I'm enjoying all of these things. But I've just now started to kind of unpack how much of my identity was wrapped up in being a physical therapist, and I don't have an identity outside of that. My friend is so wise. Like, I wish she would. I need to tell her just how wise she is, because that got me thinking too about how much of my identity is wrapped up in some of these things that I love doing. But also, you're a human being outside of being a physical therapist. And it's so important that we're taking the time to care for you as the human before you, the physical therapist, can show up and take care of your patients. And I know this is something that we're going to talk a little bit more about in an upcoming episode, which I'm really excited to share with you. But for now, I think this is a great mindset shift as far as what are these things that we're doing now, because we've always kind of done them that way, that we don't need to do this way, that could save us time, that could save us energy, that could save us stress and frustration, to where we can spend more time doing what really matters, doing what we enjoy, doing what actually moves the needle forward, is actually going to be helpful for advancing our practice and our career as physical therapists. And I would be remiss if I didn't connect this with, there is so much stuff that I think, especially we as early career physical therapists, waste our time doing, that are not actually helping us move up and advance in our practice, right? At the end of the day, you are doing a skilled service, and you deserve to be compensated appropriately for it. And this is a big conversation that's happening in healthcare, especially physical therapy right now. But so many of us are doing things that are not going to directly correlate to being appropriately compensated for the level of experience and service you are providing to your patients and to your communities. And I think, again, as early career physical therapists, we think, I'm going to be a team player. I'm going to be a jack of all trades. I'm going to get all of the things done. I'm going to say yes to all the projects and show my employer just how good of a PT I am. And that does not correlate to you getting the raise that you should. And that's unacceptable. Again, to zoom out, the moves that we're making here and now today in your practice are helping to drive and determine what happens in 10, 15, 20, 25 plus years in your career as a physical therapist. I'm going to challenge you to think big in this way, and to also think small. What are those small tasks that you're doing that you really shouldn't be doing? You really don't have to do. So I've come up with this list of 10 ways to help save you time, energy, stress, and frustration, so that you can spend more time doing things that you have the training, you have the specialization, you have the education and the passion to do, so that you can spend less time doing the things that don't give you joy, that don't help your patients actually get better, that don't leave you feeling fulfilled at the end of the day. And while I understand that you're probably not going to be able to employ all of these tasks all at the same time, even if you start with one or two, what kind of a difference could that make for you as you're going through your day-to-day of being a physical therapist? One of the things I really enjoy, Erin LeBauer of Cash PT talks about is, are we physical therapists who are working to, what is it? He talks about, like, are you living for the weekend, or are you like living your life during the week because you actually enjoy what you're doing? I want you to be someone who likes what you do during the week and also gets to do super fun things on the weekend. And you don't feel like you have to save all of your living for the weekend, because that's no way to live. And ideally, if the past few years have taught us anything, that how precious time is and how important it is to do things that mean something to you. And that means working as a physical therapist, but also getting to do things that you love and resting and taking care of yourself. So here's 10 ways to help you save time in your practice. And again, think of this as 10 ways to save time in addition to quit folding your underwear. Number 1, use technology to your advantage. Technology gets a lot of hate these days. I understand why, but there's also a lot of good that comes with technology. For example, maybe that means using your documentation system to the best of your ability. I am such a big believer of templates. I preach templates. I teach templates in the courses that I teach because they're so important. And this is not me saying that I take one method of practice, one method of treating and evaluating patients, and everybody is fit into this cookie cutter mold, and that's just how I practice. That is not at all the case. I create templates with placeholders because what that enables me to do is, especially like for my assessments in my daily notes and in my evaluations, I have a framework where I have the kind of like the skeleton of what information needs to be communicated in the assessment with lots of placeholders and blank spaces to where I can then take the story, the interaction that I've had with this patient, and create a full descriptive narrative so that whoever is reading the note next, again, whoever that is, has the full picture of what's going on. Who is this person? What are they experiencing? How am I going to help them? What needs to be done in order to get them where they need to be, kind of deal. So again, I am not taking every patient and fitting them into this cookie cutter mold. I am taking this framework and then applying it to my patients. And what that allows me to do is I write bomb documentation, y'all. Like, I am not afraid to say it. I write really good documentation. And part of it is genuinely because I have these templates that I have developed over time that enable me to get the message across, saves me time, and I can move on to the next thing. Like, literally between my templates and then, honestly, God bless my therapy documentation system. So I use Jane app, if you're unfamiliar. I can do an eval in 10 minutes. I can do my daily notes in like 2 minutes. I'm really good, and it gets the point across. Like, I will say, I will boast about that because it is absolutely true. And it truly came from, I use these templates and I can use them really efficiently. And that's a huge thing. We can also use technology to help us with some of these other tasks, right? Maybe if you're a practice owner, you're trying to, write some content, create some information that you're going to post maybe on like a blog or on social media. There are tools that can help with that. Again, I know that AI is a frontier. I haven't decided yet if it's fully good, if it's fully bad. I think it's how we use it. And what I do is I can use AI, like chat AI, as an outline. And I always go back through and I check the material because it does absolutely have errors. It's definitely not where it needs to be regarding oncology or cancer information for physical therapists, but it can give me ideas. And sometimes I just need an idea to get started, and then I can get to writing, a blog post or a podcast episode or whatever. But having something as in a computer here can help me generate ideas, and then I can get started. That's a big thing for me. But maybe you're also having help on like the scheduling and the billing that you're doing as a physical therapist. There are various apps out there that are so helpful. Again, my therapy system that I use here in my clinic is Jane app, and it has documentation, scheduling. I've also linked my payment processor to it. So it's literally like a one-stop shop. It's amazing. So instead of me having to have 3 different systems to do all of that, it does it for me. And that's another way that I'm able to save so much time in my practice. And ultimately, I can focus fully on my patient when they're here with me because I have a system running in the background that does a whole bunch of stuff for me very cohesively. It's amazing. So number one, use technology to your advantage. Number two, outsource non-clinical tasks. There's a lot out there, right? One of the big ones I'm thinking of, cleaning and laundry. Now, let me be clear, and I've said this earlier in this episode, just because you're a physical therapist and you're, a insert title here, like I'm a doctor of physical therapy, just because I'm a doctor of physical therapy or a master of physical therapy or a bachelor of physical therapy or a PTA, etc., you're not above doing laundry and cleaning, right? If I am in a situation where I have a colleague who needs help and the way to help them is laundry or cleaning, I'm going to do it, right? If I'm not doing something actively right now and I can help, I'm going to do it, right? And that's the kindly thing to do. But you don't need to be spending your time, especially as an employee of somebody else, cleaning the floors and doing like super deep cleans of the clinic or doing laundry on a daily, weekly basis for your clinic. Those are all things that can be hired out. And yes, I can already hear some people saying, Elise, but that's an additional expense. You're right. But how much are your services worth compared to the services that this person, this company is providing in the laundry? Right? There's a difference in value here. And it's really important that we consider the value of things. And with the time that I can buy back by having someone else deep clean my clinic or handle my laundry on a weekly basis, I can see one, two, or any number of more patients who are going to pay for that to happen. And then I don't have the stress or like, stress, for example, laundry's not stressful for me, but if I forget laundry and then I have to do it last minute, that definitely stresses me out. So imagine these different non-clinical tasks that you do not need, like you don't have to do them. You as a physical therapist with your training and your licensure do not have to do those things. Someone else can do those. And part of this is also you taking the ownership of, I can do them, I don't have to do them. And being really honest with yourself is really, really important here. So number two, outsource non-clinical tasks. Number three, be realistic with your schedule. And I know this is hard, especially if you're not in charge of your schedule. But it's so important that we are realistic with our schedule, both in the clinic, but also outside the clinic, of what kind of time do you need to see a patient and treat a patient, and what time do you need to do your documentation, what time do you need to drive from your home to your place of work, right? Accounting for traffic. Are you going to stop for coffee or tea on the way in? I don't care what you do, but we have to be realistic with our schedule, because if we're trying to fit too many things into a too short of a time period, it's not going to get done. Or it's going to get done and you're going to be stressed. Everything is going to be crammed or cramped in. And we're not able to spend our time fully present with our patients because we're worried and we're stressed about XYZ, like the traffic, and then you were late and then you spilled your beverage on your scrubs, what have you. Again, I'm spitballing a little bit here, but I think you really understand and appreciate that when we're not realistic with our schedules, we're rushing our time and our treatments and the quality of care for our patients, and we're just decreasing quality of care overall. And it's so important, especially on the oncology field. We have such a responsibility to show up fully for our patients and provide them the best level of care possible. And so it really starts from the moment you wake up and goes until you lay your head down at night, right? We know, especially as healthcare professionals, we should definitely know this because we talk to our patients about this all the time. Work doesn't just happen at work. Right? Oftentimes there's bleeding over of how I feel at work definitely sometimes can come home with me. How I feel at home sometimes comes with me to work. And it's really important, again, if we're able to be realistic with our schedules, it can help us have better energy and just mood and approach to patient care in general. So then we're still able to give our full self at work, and then have time for us at home when we finish. Maybe that's a partner, maybe that's a spouse, maybe that's children, maybe that's pets, maybe that's all of the above. But be realistic with your schedule, because it totally sets the tone for your whole day, both at work and at home and wherever you are elsewhere in your community. Number 4, set boundaries and limit interruptions during treatment sessions, especially with email. Again, I was the queen of having my documentation when I was in corporate practice, documentation open, email screen open, and then I was also working with my patient at the time. And y'all, if it is an emergency 911 situation, it will not come over email. It just won't. If you've ever read, I think it's the 7, I'm seeing if I have it here on my bookshelf. It's like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think, by Stephen Covey. And he has this quadrant, and it talks about urgent and important and non-urgent versus non-important kind of tasks. And email, like urgent and important, is the number 1 quadrant, 1 absolutely have to respond to immediately kind of situations. Like those are emergencies. Like if my patient comes in and they're in cardiac distress, like that is urgent, that is important, need to address right now. Email is not in that category, right? And this may take a little bit of training yourself, but also others that you work with, that email is not urgent and important. If it is truly both of those, it will come in the form of some other communication, often like a phone call, right? But email is not urgent and important. It can wait. It can wait. And so I really want you to set boundaries. Even if it is I'm not going to have my email browser open while I'm working with a patient, right? I'm going to check it in maybe like in between sessions, or I'll check it in the morning, I'll check it at lunch, I'll check it in the afternoon, or whatever that system looks like for you. Set boundaries, not just about your time, but how you're spending your time also, and what you're allowing into your space. One of the big things that I also really tried to implement in my practice is I would not take phone calls as much as I was able to while I was working with a patient. So every once in a while, you get a phone call from maybe like, a nurse or a medical assistant. Maybe it was another physical therapist from like a clinic down the road. Again, if it wasn't urgent and it wasn't important, like it could be a message that was written down and communicated to me, or an email that I could read later, that needed to happen. Because if there's one thing I hate, it's when I'm working with someone and I have to get up, stop what I'm doing, attend to something else, come back, and then try to get back on the train of whatever thought I was on. That takes me so long. We as humans are not good at task shifting. I mean, the science is well documented. And so we need to be really, really cautious about the interruptions and distractions that we're allowing to come between us and being able to serve our patients within that precious time that they have taken out of their day to spend with us. Number 5, plan and prioritize daily tasks to minimize time wasted on the less important things, right? Again, I know I'm hating on email. I don't hate email that much, but email is another perfect example here, right? Is it super priority that while I have a patient that I'm working with and I have some documentation to do, that I'm checking email? Probably not. And so again, what I started doing once I literally heard the quit folding your underwear situation, I would come into the office in the morning, and for me, I didn't actually do the laundry, like I wasn't washing the laundry, but I would take the laundry down to the laundry chute, basically, get a new bag out. I would kind of set the clinic up for whatever I needed it to do. I would review patient charts for any patients who were coming in, and then, still not to email, I would open up whatever documentation I needed for the morning's patients. If I was able to, the whole days of patients, because we had to do this whole like checking out of charts. It was a really goofy system. And only then would I open up email? Because again, if something truly urgent had happened overnight, it would have been a phone call, because every once in a while I would have one of those. Not very common, but again, nothing came through email that was life shattering. It was always a phone call, especially when it came to a patient. So again, plan and prioritize your daily tasks. What is most important for you to get the majority of stuff done in your day? Not everything. One of the things that is talked about a lot when it comes to like checklists and to-do lists, which I absolutely love, we tend to be really ambitious when in fact humans can usually only get like 3 to 5 big tasks a day done. And I say like big, I mean like tasks in general done. And so if we have like a to-do list of 10 to 15 things, they're not going to get done. They're just not. And so again, I think this comes back to be realistic with your time, but you've got to prioritize what is most important to get done in the day. So again, you can deliver the highest quality of care to your patients and still have energy and time for you and whoever else is important for you at the end of the day. This next one is a big one for me. Number 6, quit saying yes to things that don't move the needle in your practice or your career. One of the best examples I have of this, again, when I was baby PT Elise, I said yes to every project and like extra thing that came my way. Because again, I wanted to be a team player. I thought it would help my career. It did none of those, because what ended up happening was my company learned that they could pass on extra work to me and they could count on it to be done because I was always working. And so what ended up happening was I was creating marketing materials when my company had a whole marketing department that they paid to do the things that I was doing for free. Y'all, that is one of the dumbest things I have ever done. And I'm not afraid to say it now. Like, you should not be doing things that your company is paying other people to do that you are doing for free. That is absurd. And that is the biggest waste of your time, because again, I am going to bet with a lot of certainty, like 98.5% certainty, that those tasks you're doing for free are not actually going to result in you getting a promotion, getting a raise. Because again, why would they pay you more for something that you're doing for free, especially when they are paying other people in the company or maybe outside the company to do that thing? But again, you're doing it for free. That's not okay. And again, we could have a whole conversation about corporate exploitation that we're not going to have in this podcast, but I think you can tell how strongly I feel about this. So again, if you're saying yes to extra projects and whatnot, I like doing presentations. I've always liked doing presentations in my career as a physical therapist. And so I'm not opposed to like doing a networking presentation if I know that it's directly going to benefit the community, because that's a good thing to do, right? And I will do those, and I have done those, and I'll continue to do those, because I also know that I am educating the public. I am putting my face out there. I am putting both physical therapy as a whole, but also my practice and cancer rehab, oncology, physical therapy out there for the community to better understand what's happening. And then if and when they or someone near to them needs my services, they're going to say, you know what? I remember Elise gave this presentation previously. I'm going to go hunt down her card or whatever. I'm not opposed to that. And I think there's a time and point where like sometimes you got to do things, but if you're doing these things consistently and it's not being reflected or compensated appropriately, again, paycheck friend, you got to stop that. And again, you should not be creating marketing materials for your company for free when they are paying a whole marketing department to do that for you. No friend. Number 7, train and delegate certain responsibilities to your support staff. Now, I don't have any support staff right now for my private practice, so I can't speak much to that. But I do have some support staff for the Onco PT. Now, these staff members are behind the scenes and they are doing a lot of tasks. So, Onco PT team, You know who you are, and I love you for it, because they have given me so much time back that I can pay them for, right? I can do all of those tasks that I have delegated out to them, but it takes me a long time and I don't enjoy doing it. And it's the same thing as a physical therapist working in clinical care, right? There are things you do not need to be doing. Again, we talked a little bit about laundry and cleaning earlier, and it's still really, really important that we are, again, making sure that we're doing the things that are really most important for us as the licensed professional to do, not trying to do everything when, again, someone else can do that and you can buy back your time. That's critical here. Number 8, take advantage of continuing education courses to increase your efficiency, your effectiveness, and to improve your clinical skills. If you know that you kind of know how to do this thing, but you could know how to do it better if you learned about it, then do that, right? Because if you're able to not struggle as much through the actual clinical care side of things, then that is absolutely something you need to do. Case in point, if you know that you need more on the basics of treating individuals with cancer, we have another upcoming live round of our Cancer Basics course happening on May 20th, 2023. If you are listening to this in the future, if you have missed that date, don't worry, we probably have another live round coming up, or the on-demand version of Cancer Basics course, where we will walk you through the absolute basics you need to understand to start treating your patients with cancer. This course is approved for CEUs in 40 plus states for physical therapists, and you can find out more information on theoncopt.com/cancer basics. So can't wait to see you there. Again, this is just another example of continuing education courses that are going to help you learn what you need to so that you can better show up for your patients and stop wasting time struggling through tasks or information that you're not as familiar with. Now, number 9, incorporate self-care practices into daily routines to help you prevent the burnout and mental strain and physical strain, frankly, of being a healthcare professional, being a physical therapist, right? One of the big things that I did a lot of is I would stay after work to finish my documentation and work over my lunch break. I'm not paid for working late, and I was not paid for working late or working over my lunch break. And so that's more free labor that I'm giving to the company who was already underpaying me. And that was absolutely contributing to the physical and mental stress and issues that I was having, right? If I was leaving work late, then I wasn't able to get to my exercise class on time, which meant that I wasn't exercising. If you don't take care of yourself, and I'll talk more about this in an upcoming podcast episode, but if you don't take care of yourself, how in the world are you supposed to show up and take care of your patients? I'll answer that for you. You can't. You have to take care of yourself. And so you've got to incorporate and protect those self-care practices as a part of a daily, weekly routine for you so that you can care for yourself and then be able to show up fully for your patients. And the last one I'll go over here briefly. Create a standardized approach to your treatment planning and assessment to reduce time spent on documentation. And again, some of this goes back to templates, but also your flow, right? What I would do, and I still do this in my evaluations, is I would do all of my tests and measures in sitting first, and then standing, and then supine. And even just that clumping of tasks helped me decrease the transition time that just kind of, it adds up and it's bulky and you can feel it and your patients can feel it, and then you feel scattered and it just doesn't help anybody. So again, templates are a really, really great way to do this also, but also even like, how do you structure your sessions, your evaluations to make the most of your time with your patients, to not only get more stuff done, but to get more useful stuff done and more useful information from your sessions so that you can better spend your time actually helping your patients get done what they need to get done, right? So 10 things that are going to help you save time. And again, all of this stems from quit folding your underwear. Quit doing the silly little things that aren't actually helping you or your patients, that you could stop doing altogether, that you could delegate out to others or change so that you can be a more effective, efficient physical therapist with your time, so that A, you can show up better for your patients and ultimately show up for yourself and those that you care about and love when work is done. Because life is so precious and you shouldn't just be waiting until the weekend to live it, or not living it at all because you're so tired and stressed and frustrated. That's not a life worth living, and I don't want that for you, friend. This is coming from someone who is still working on this. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm trying. And it's important for me to share what I've learned so that I can hopefully help you live your best life as a physical therapist, especially when you're showing up so wonderfully for your patients, especially in a world as vulnerable as oncology. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate your time. And remember, you are exactly the physical therapist that your patients with cancer need. So let's get to work.